All right, and welcome to the Bean and Saltine Show, episode 5. You obviously have no idea what happened, but we started the show maybe 30 minutes ago. It was going so well. Probably the
Missed
best.
everything.
Yeah, it was probably the best show we've ever had, and you'll never hear it ever. It's lost.
Sorry.
So we're just going to get right into it. Today, our guest is my friend, Nick Hood.
Hello, hello.
We met at work about a year ago, and when we would close up shop, always kind of pick his brain about, just life in general, mainly about psychedelics, and that's kind of what we'll be gauging today. Real quick to just pass it by, I already introduced it, but again, you'll never know how that went. I just wasn't recording when we started. It was an accident. It happens to the best of us.
It was too good, you know? It was too good for the public. I'm sorry.
The universe would not allow that awesomeness that was a podcast to be released because it would just cause universal harmony, and we're not ready for that yet.
Yeah.
Yes, not yet.
It was going swimmingly. But so the beer I picked out for our guest today is from Speakeasy in San Francisco called Butchertown. It's a India black ale. We pretty much finished it already. So let's go to your review on the aftertaste. Actually, I have a little more here.
All right, yeah, let's get here. The last little splash. I'm trying to remember here. It was something about the malty, hoppy something and a light finish. I don't know.
Salty
It's good.
and cloudy and
It's good.
soft.
Oh, yes. Yes, very light finish. It tastes kind of like beer. And it's delicious. I mean, Speakeasy really did a good job here. India Black Ale.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with India Pale Ales, so I didn't really know what to expect here, but this is delicious. I think last time I mentioned, it has kind of a thick stout or porter, kind of thickness to it, which is good. It's creamy.
Yeah, I enjoyed it quite well. All right, stop
Showing
wasting
it
time.
through you guys.
Yes.
Oh man, we schooled all of you. We taught you so much about psychedelics and their and the benefits behind them and some history, and we went deep. And you'll never know how deep we went. So we're gonna try to recreate it. We're not gonna have the same gusto. So
Yeah.
We will try, though.
Okay, so when Nick and I would talk, it was at a point where I had learned about the brew ayahuasca, and what that is a brew mainly done in the Amazon by shamans, where it contains two different plants amongst the millions of plants that are in the Amazon. Natives found two that would make this brew perfectly, and one plant contains mainly DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine, which is a psychoactive compound, and the other is an inhibitor, because our bodies already produce DMT. Where it's coming from is still kind of being discussed. Some people are saying that it's coming from the pineal gland, which in some reptiles is actually an eye.
Yeah.
A cornea with no lens. Or
Yeah.
a cornea and maybe a lens, but yeah.
Yeah, it's what's called the third eye, and for us it's just a gland, but in some reptiles they actually have like a cornea in there. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So they think it might be coming from there, but our bodies produce DMT naturally. It's in almost every plant, but our bodies probably wouldn't appreciate us tripping balls our whole life. So it counteracts it with an inhibitor. And so in ayahuasca, one plant has DMT and one has an MAO inhibitor, which allows your body to absorb it and allow it to become psychoactive. So that's kind of what we're talking about. DMT psychedelics right now are something that's extremely taboo. I think we're seeing a slight change right now with all these studies coming out showing how beneficial it is for people with PTSD, depression, you name it, addiction. So we'll go to Nick to just maybe talk about some of your experience.
Yeah.
I know in the Faux podcast we started talking about psilocybin. Maybe go into your DMT experience.
Sure. Dimethyltryptamine was something that I had heard about and I had been actively pursuing for a period of a couple of years. I had had a great time exploring psilocybin, and I feel like I had gotten a pretty good taste of what lysergic acid is like, and I just didn't know where to find any DMT, and something with a name like dimethyltryptamine. I mean, who do you ask? So I was living in Central Texas in San Marcos, and I was at a party, like a kegger on my street, and I happened to walk by a gentleman who I overhear him mentioning to someone that, oh yeah, I got some DMT, and you can just kind of like sprinkle it on a bowl and then just smoke the bowl.
So this was like a crystal form.
Yeah. Like crystal, crushed crystal. So it's basically like white powder. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I walk by this guy, and I, hear him and do a quick about face, come right up to him and like, I can't remember how I started the conversation, but it was basically like, okay, I need to talk to you. Like, you have something that stuff that I need to know. Yeah. And he was very, very friendly and outgoing, and just said that he was like, oh, well, I live right down the street, in the next apartment complex over. Like, I have a little bit left. Like, you just want to come over to my house? Yeah. So, I grabbed my girlfriend's hand and we follow this gentleman to his house. I can't remember what his name was. It wasn't something normal. And now it's funny. It's been so long that I can't even remember it. But it was kind of like, he told me what his name was, and it was like, kind of like, okay. Like, I'm kind of not going to remember that, but, but whatever. Yeah. Anyway. So we go to his house and we sit down, and he pulls out this bag it has kind of like this little patch of white powder in it, and he puts it on top of some weed on a bowl. He takes a hit, hands it to me. I take a hit, and I hand it to my girlfriend, and instantly, all the things that I had read in my research, I noticed that it tasted. There was kind of a taste of burning plastic, and instantaneously. I mean, as I was still inhaling, I felt things start to change, and you could tell that things were getting serious. And I hand the pipe to her, and I lean back, and I'm looking around the room, and it was difficult to describe exactly what happened visually. It was as if everything that I could see and all the objects I could see in my field of vision, everything began to separate into its own space. So it's like the objects themselves didn't get bigger or smaller, but the spaces in between every object got bigger. And as I noticed kind of every bit of existence kind of isolate into its own thing, I realized that everything was just kind of going away from itself. And as everything kind of dissolved into color, the color itself eventually dissolved into darkness. And I was left just in complete darkness. The last thing I had seen, my leg had been crossed, my left leg on my right knee. I remember looking down at my Adidas shoe, and then I just saw the white shoe and the red stripes just kind of turn into pixelated, a whole bunch of dots of color, and then everything just went away, just disappeared into darkness. And I was in this space that just kind of, there was nothing to think about it. Like, it was nothingness. That's what it was. And eventually I realized that I wasn't in nothingness. I was just looking the wrong way. And as I somehow reoriented myself in this space and I turned around, it was as if I was a speck of dust, and behind me was the sun. And I turned around, and this thing is 6 inches from my face, right behind me. And it's just this massive, massive entity that is towering over me. And it was just complete disbelief. All I could see was that this thing was huge, and it seemed to have knowledge of me. It was certainly powerful enough to have destroyed me, but it didn't take the opportunity, which I am thankful for. And after some unknown period of time of basically my subconscious self staring with its jaw on the floor, this sun-like entity said, somehow put a voice in my head that said, "Get your shit together." And then I was kind of slapped back into existence, and I woke up. I snapped up on the couch next to this guy and my girlfriend, where I had kind of taken this hit, handed the pipe, and then my head had fallen back, and I kind of passed out on the couch for about 30 seconds. And all this happened in this period this 30 second or so period, that to me it felt like I was floating in space for an hour before I realized I needed to turn around and see this thing behind me. So it was a very abrupt experience and very hard to kind of comprehend at first. And so I woke up and I didn't know really how to form any words. Like I didn't know the vocabulary to really describe this. So I look at the guy and he's just kind of nodding and smiling and saying, yeah, uh-huh. he knows, and now he knows that I know, and he knows I know he knows. And yeah, anyway. And then my girlfriend and I had been in not the best of ways at the time. And so I look over at her and she's just mean mugging and she's ready to get out of here. So it was kind of a harsh, reintroduction to reality. And I realized that she had somewhere she had to go. And so I had to release her, to dismiss her, or excuse her, to leave. And here, she was kind of waiting on me to kind of get my shit together. So I explained to her that I'm going to need a minute to kind of gather myself. So she should continue on without me. We'll meet up later. In the meantime, I sit back down and me and this gentleman, talk. Keep calling him a gentleman. He was like, I was, 21 and he was 23. So I don't want you to think it was like some old shaman.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
An old guy with a beard. Yeah.
No, guy with a faux hawk and tattoos. And we kind of talk for a minute, and he just kind of we just kind of share like woes and dudes, for a minute, and then he says like, hey, like, well, I want to show you something, and so he has a DJ set up in his bedroom. He has 2 turntables and a mixer, and he's like, well, my crossfader is broken right now, so I just kind of have to use the volume faders, the level faders to mix, but I can make a little music here. So I just kind of stood there for 15 or 20 minutes while this guy did this super chill, this completely sublime, down tempo mix on vinyl. And you could tell that he was just kind of messing around, but you could tell from his movements and his control of the records, that he was very skilled and very, very, very adept at what he was doing. And it was obvious that he was just kind of fucking around with a guy that he had just met at a party and done some drugs with. It was a serious experience, but, he was just kind of having some fun afterwards and, showing me that he makes music. And at the end of it, he just kind of stopped, and I'm just kind of, quietly blown away because I was, both by the experience I had had in the living room on the couch, and then by just kind of the ease with which he was making this mind-blowing music. And that was something that really cemented in my mind, one, that music is something, I knew that I wanted to be involved in music. At that time, I was researching what it took to get accepted to the sound recording technology program at Texas State University. So I was already kind of on that path, but watching this guy DJ, it really kind of blew my mind. And this was, 5 or 6 minutes after we had just had this, for lack of a better word, mind-melting experience, And so it's not like having this heavy experience, just completely shuts down your brain and disables you. This is something where you have this, it puts ideas in your head, and certainly ideas are a powerful tool, but this is something that was absolutely positive. And I unfortunately, I never met the guy again. I left, and that experience, it completely rearranged my life. I kind of took a close look at where I was in my life, and I keep referring to her to my girlfriend because we still hung out a lot, but we had actually been kind of on again, off again, and it was kind of thing where I was only in that location really for her. And once I really examined my life at the behest of this entity that I met on the other side, I realized that I needed to grow, and I needed to continue kind of moving on to the places where I needed to be. And within a matter of days, I had moved, back to Dallas, close to my family, and kind of got myself put back together and in a better place. And I eventually, moved out here to LA, and the rest is all kind of history. But that experience, really kind of instigated all that and got me motivated to get back on track with what I was doing. And I don't know how long it would have taken me to get myself put back together had it not been for that experience. And I don't know what it is about it. I'm not saying that everyone is going to be motivated the same way by it, but for some reason, that's what I needed to get me going. And it was this thing that I'd been searching for a long time, and it was kind of like I wasn't going to continue on with my life until I got an answer about this. And it seems a bit, I don't know, what is it, tempestuous? I don't know. Maybe that's a completely made up set of words there, but I don't know. It seems kind of like a braggart or kind of prideful to insist that you get an answer. But it was something that I wanted to know, and once I got that answer, I realized that okay, like it really did kind of solve a lot of questions for me. Up until that point, I had been someone who felt obligated to party. And certainly it's fun, but I think we all know what I mean when I say party, and I kind of overindulged at times. And this one experience kind of taught me about a lot of that, kind of where the limit is and kind of what's the point. Like, there's really no point in all the excessive partying that I was doing because I wasn't even doing something that was really powerful. I took one hit of this substance that I kind of stumbled on by accident, and it changed my life. And it wouldn't have happened any other way. That's the short way to put it.
It sounded like a very, very positive experience for you.
Absolutely.
Now, you did say it lasted about like 30 seconds or so that kind of trip took place. And is that usually how long it takes, or does it depend on how much you take and how you take it?
Yeah, it depends on how much you take. All the specifics kind of play a role there, but it's on the scale of minutes. 1 minute or a couple minutes. It's not something that puts you out for half an hour,
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
and when you come back from it, it's just like waking up. It's not even like you have to kind of get yourself kind of resettled or sober up. It's like, you just kind of closed your eyes and had a really vivid daydream.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now when you were experiencing that, did you like it? Could you feel your body? Like, did you have awareness of your body to where you could look across the room or something like that, or was your mind just going full speed into another place? Like, were you conscious of what was going on around you at all?
No, not at all. I was transported completely out of it. Reality dissolved completely. What was around me it dissolved visually, and it left me in a state where my eyes were not doing the seeing. And so that's where it's kind of interesting because I don't remember closing my eyes. I remember looking and seeing everything go to darkness.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how your visual circuit can be interrupted and affected like that. It does still have to go through the central computer of your brain. So if you mess with the central computer, you can create things visually that that you can't really explain, because you're kind of introducing code from another source into the mix there. But yeah, it was something where I didn't see myself. I didn't turn my body around. It was just kind of like, first person view, and I just, joystick left, and I turn around and I see the sun right there. So it was,
wow.
Yeah.
What's kind of irritating to me is when people that don't understand things like cannabis or psilocybin mushrooms, or in this case DMT, usually their go-to argument is, are you afraid of reality? You're trying to escape reality. You can't deal with real life. And in my research and in some of my experience, really as close to anything psychoactive I've gotten to was eating, eating edible cannabis, edible weed, and that completely changes the way it has its effect on you if you smoke it or eat it. And I think that was as close as I've gotten to a kind of psychedelic experience. But they're always saying that, and then in my experience, what I've heard from people and hearing from you too is that it's completely like inside you, where you look to yourself, and to me that's almost like dealing even more so with reality, because you're not able to distract yourself with what's going on outside, oh, watch the Kardashians and their problems, oh, what's going on with the Queen of England, what's going on with this,
nothing else matters.
And so you're going completely in your own consciousness, which to me, having that be illegal for an adult to be able to control their own consciousness is ridiculous. We're adults. If people want to indulge in a psychedelic or something more harmful, that's completely up to them. Being an adult, making that illegal kind of takes away the whole meaning of being an adult.
What's more harmful than alcohol also?
Exactly. That's the
And
comparison
that
I want
makes
to make.
people go nuts. Like people go on rampages.
You never
and shit.
hear
I mean, you
anything
lose
good.
control.
Yeah, you hear
Yeah.
like, oh, it made me a little more loose. I was able to talk to so and so, or it made me the life of the party. But you get all these drunk driving accidents, deaths, all these things that happen with alcohol, and that being one of the
Addiction. Yeah.
main addiction, that main problems, along with some over the counter medication that people get addicted to, or overdose, along with you name it, other things. And then you have something like medical marijuana or recreational marijuana that does nothing. All these psychedelics completely make you introspective,
Right.
and so you're able to kind of figure your own shit out and then reflect that to the outside world. And to me, that's not escaping. That's coming to terms with who you are and what you're about, and not lying to yourself or ignoring yourself, because all these distractions that have come about in the world we live in, TV, internet, good and bad, just all these things that we're completely just distracted by. It kind of makes us detached from kind of nature, without trying to sound like a hippie. It kind of detaches
yeah.
us from nature and the universe, and I think that's something that we're all missing right now.
Yeah, I think it takes
Well-
it takes a lot of time away from where we would be examining ourselves, because there's so much information. So we have so much time to examine, the Kardashians, for example. There's certainly a lot of distractions, and it's something that people haven't really been forced to think about before. The age of television has really changed the way people think, and so I think it's something that no one's really had to deal with before. So it's not surprising that we're having this kind of difficulty adjusting and figuring out what the problems are with enabling such easy access to that kind of entertainment.
Yeah.
Just making I think Graham Hancock said it the best, where he said it's ridiculous to make your control of your own consciousness illegal.
Yeah. Well, if you'll give someone the ability to buy alcohol, which is a poison to every part of your body, why would you not allow them, the freedom to ingest something else that, intoxicates them, but doesn't produce the same sort of statistically violent and negative results that alcohol does. It doesn't make any sense. And when you get into that, it's easy to say that they're trying to put limits and controls on what you can do with your mind. And I don't know about you, but the thought of mind control does not make me, happy. So
Yeah.
And are you familiar with it? Kind of just makes me think about the whole reason that marijuana is illegal to begin with, and I feel like it's those in higher power have more control over things. So the story I'm familiar with is that William Randolph Hearst of Hearst Castle, wealth and fame, who also owned a variety of publishing companies, right? He had some newspapers that were under him, along with somebody else kind of in that same game, made up stories because they controlled the media, made up negative stories about marijuana and called it like wild tobacco from Mexico. And from my understanding, the reasons were because they were into paper. So alongside owning these publishing companies, they were also heavy investors or owners of like paper mills, in which used wood. And if cannabis was legal, not even the psychedelic or any of those other benefits, but just cannabis as a plant, like hemp, using it for paper, rope, building, anything, would have put them out of business. So they started spinning stories in their own papers that that marijuana, this crazy thing from Mexico, was making black people and Mexicans horny for white people, white women.
yeah,
Wow.
all to protect the paper business.
To protect, and so they started spinning all these lies, and it became legal, not even illegal, not that long ago, mainly because, and I don't even think like the marijuana was illegal the first time. It was like just cannabis all around, right? Or was it the other way around?
I mean, I think it was probably just the plant in general, and
Yeah.
they used any means necessary, including the psychoactive effects, to villainize it.
Yeah.
Ban the plant
Yeah,
altogether.
to demonize it. Yeah.
And now, if you've heard that in Colorado, they actually have a problem with legalizing marijuana for recreational and medicinal use, that they're getting so much in tax revenue that they're going to have to start refunding money to the citizens of the state.
You're just gonna have to give people some money.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
What a shame.
I think they set it up so that most of the tax dollars coming from cannabis were going to education and law enforcement. Irony there.
Yeah.
And now they have so much that they have to give it back to the people.
The police don't have any more Hummers to buy. They've already bought all the MP5s they need. Yeah.
It's like rocket launchers. Yeah, we got a few
Yeah,
in the
we got
back.
those.
Just give them back the money. And so I think we're in this awesome time right now where at least for marijuana, it's the kind of taboo is coming down, and I'm maybe in 5 years, maybe less, that it's going to be a little more widespread, and not such a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
for people
tides
to
are
indulge in.
the times they are changing.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly as we see, more states enable it. It's just kind of thing where I think you're making people realize that it's okay. It's not gonna make your neighborhood into the ghetto.
Yeah.
It's not gonna make everything a barren wasteland here.
Yeah.
If anything, it puts a professional business face on this thing that so many people indulge in, but before would have to deal with less than scrupulous individuals, and now it's the kind of thing where you gotta abide by tax laws, and you have to run a legitimate business, and that's safer for everyone. I mean, there certainly weren't security guards whenever I would purchase marijuana from my friends in high school or whatnot, but you go to a dispensary and there's a guard there, and you have to go through a gate where they identify you before they let you in, and certainly it's a safe professional environment, and that's really what we need. It doesn't have to be this back room dark alley kind of thing. It shouldn't be. That's dangerous. So this is the kind of thing where this is how you make it okay, by putting it out there in the open. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. If you do things out in the open, it has to be above board because everyone sees it.
Yeah, whether you're for it or against it, or you just don't even know, I think conversation is probably the best thing for us, and for any topic. It doesn't even have to be about any drugs or anything like that. I think just having an open discussion is probably the first step to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like I'm being redundant because we already talked about it. But as we stated before, I didn't record it, so this is brand new for all of you, for all of you 5 listeners.
Both of you.
For both of you, which is just Nate and myself.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad.
Oh man.
But what I was gonna say, you kind of brushed on it now, but you definitely talked about it earlier. Was doing your research.
Yes.
And that's very important, I think, because that's kind of the phase I'm in right now. I mean, I'm very interested in psilocybin mushrooms, magic mushrooms, and hoping that'll be my next step. But doing your research is probably the best thing because it's not for everybody. I know I'm getting confused whether I've said it now or said it in the podcast that we didn't record. But I'm going to say it again anyway.
Yeah.
But I know for DMT that there are warnings that if you are taking any antidepressants, probably some over-the-counter stuff, that you might want to double check before doing any kind of psychedelic, because that could have some physical harm when you combine all those different chemicals and things in your body. And it's not for everybody. I mean, I would like to assume that most people can benefit from maybe smoking a little bit of weed. I know there's a lot of people in
Taking
my
a chill
family
pill, yeah.
that would have such great lives if they would just smoke one once in a while, or put a little tincture in their coffee.
Yeah.
Or like the thing I'm doing before I get into that. So yeah, it's not for everybody. I think a lot of people should try. It would probably do some good, but there's people that barely have a grip on the reality that they're in now. And so to put them in another universe might do some harm for the rest of us.
Yeah, you got to pass this test before you graduate. Yeah. Yeah. Move on to the next thing.
Right now, the thing I talk about, and I know that both of you have probably heard me babble on about it for a good while now. But the thing I'm trying to talk to people about are isolation tanks.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you mentioned this.
And you believe me that I just completely talk the ears off of my family because I think that some of them could definitely benefit from it. I did take my dad to a session, and my first mistake was I didn't tell him about maybe not eating so much or drinking any coffee because we did an early session. I believe it was like 10 o'clock.
Okay.
And this is a guy that works like 2 or 3 jobs and sleeps like 10 minutes. I swear to God, 10 minutes a night, and he's like right as rain. You know, like I wouldn't be surprised that if, you know, unfortunately one day when he passes, that the guy doing the autopsy is gonna be like, he's a fucking robot.
Yeah.
I'll be like, I knew it.
Yeah.
Nobody can do that. But so this is that guy who's got energy from I don't even know where. And he went with me to go to try the deprivation tank. And he was a little fidgety because he had had coffee that morning.
Yeah.
He had ate normal, so he had to get out in the middle to go to the restroom.
Yeah.
And I think also because maybe he was uncomfortable, it was a little hard. But on top of that, you know, he was just fidgety. And it probably would have been best, like, after a long day's work to come in and just completely knock out.
Yeah.
But,
Be totally relaxed.
yeah, and I really think that going to a float clinic or something like that, it would be beneficial to a lot of people because you're completely, for anybody who doesn't know what it is, they started off differently, like almost coffin size, which is probably not the best idea. But the ones I've experienced are huge, like bigger than like average bathtubs. They're like 10 feet high, 6 feet long, and maybe like 4 or 5 feet wide.
Okay.
So claustrophobia is not really an issue, even if you have it.
Yeah.
It's dark in there. You get into this tank that's about 10 inches deep with water that is so packed with Epsom salt and other things that you're completely buoyant. So you have no stress on your muscles or on your body, or you're not like tightening up your butt cheeks and your your core to stay afloat.
Yeah.
Like there is no effort on your part. You lay down, you get comfortable, and the water just takes care of you.
Yeah.
The idea is that the water and the air are heated to skin temperature to the point where you're not supposed to really feel them.
Yeah.
And so all your senses are deprived. You have no light, you have no sound, you have no feeling. And the idea is that with all these distractions gone, you're able to completely go inside your mind and yourself, and either at the very least completely relax. Like you walk out of there feeling like every inch of your body was massaged like to the tenderest, you know, like if you were a Kobe beef, tender, you know, just like so you feel refreshed. And then at the very most you have some psychedelic experiences. I know for me, my eyes do a lot of shadow play, but there's no shadows because there's no light. So I'll see little things forming out of what I perceive to be shadows. And then I don't know if my eyes are closed or open sometimes.
Right.
So you could do that, but that alone, without even doing any drugs, you're able to achieve this state of meditation and just completely rid of outside interruption and just contemplate whatever you want or do nothing. That's the guy that I go to. His best advice for my dad was, be nothing, do nothing, and your mind will do the rest.
Yeah. It sounds intriguing, and I really do want to try it. And yeah, I remember you saying that after that experience, when you were doing some mixes, that your ears, felt especially refreshed, and you were hearing things with a clarity that you hadn't heard before, and that kind of intrigues me.
Yeah, that was probably the best thing I did. I did a really early session one morning. Woke up, went straight over there. I was in there for about 2 hours. He didn't have an appointment after me, so he let me go in there for 2 hours. Usually it's about 90 minutes.
Okay.
I came out, I went to the coffee shop I go to, got me an iced coffee and a bagel, came home, and I'm like, I don't even want this right now. I feel so energized and I only want to do good for myself.
Yeah.
And I exercised for like an hour and a half. I did like yoga and kettlebells and I just like whipped my own ass, but I felt great. Took a shower and I was like, I still got this bagel here. I'm not even hungry. Like I want to do something. And so I started working on music and something that I had been working on, mixing for a while, sounded completely different to me.
Yeah.
I felt like I was hearing things that I haven't heard before. I had a better sense of the space. And it kept me going for like 4, maybe 5 days. I was just in the best mood and felt completely refreshed.
That's fantastic. That's when I did ayahuasca.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it was like. It was an afterglow that lasted for a few days. I remember the next day I had to go to work, and it's like, get up, go to work. You know, I had our morning meeting. We were all going to Carl's Jr. after that. I had a breakfast burger, just a big, greasy, delicious mess. And went about my day, and it was like I just had the biggest smile on my face. You know, it was just this very, very peaceful, peacefully energizing experience. You know, it's like it makes you content, but ready to do more, ready to do like, and do not do more drugs, do more good. You know, like I want to do more. I want to do more positive things and be a positive force. And it was interesting how it's like you just woke up ready to go conquer the day. You know, I mean, it was such a great feeling. Yep. Anyway.
Yeah, man, we flowed so well, and the podcast said doesn't exist. It's kind of like the Tenacious D song. Like, what was that, Nate? It's called like the tribute song to the best song in the world.
The best, greatest song in the world, yeah.
It was like they made the very best song, but they didn't record it. Nobody was around. Nobody ever heard it but them.
No one heard it. No one will hear it ever again. Ever again. Well, a couple of things that I thought I would mention. I always think this is a tangent before I get started here, so hopefully I remember to actually say what I was going to say. There was an interview with this producer DJ named Il Gates, who previously known as the Fat Conductor, with a PH. Anyway,
nice.
There was an interview with him, and Bass Nectar, who is more well known, was doing the interview. And at the very end of the interview, said, hey, is there anything you want to say to the kids out there? And he says, love your parents, read a good book every now and then, and get the fuck outside. And I think those are very good things to abide by. I've been trying to make sure that I read, because I'll go through periods where I don't do a lot of reading, and then whenever I do, I realize that I've been a fool for not doing so. So a couple things that I've read recently. One is called The Sparrow. It's by Mary Doria Russell. This is a book that I borrowed from my mother last time I saw her. She recommended it. It's about some scientists. They receive a radio transmission from a distant galaxy. It's in the kind of near future, and this radio transmission, it's kind of like singing, or it's some sort of songs in this alien voice and alien language. And the Jesuit church has some scientists who are working, kind of on this assignment, and thus the Jesuit church is involved in the comings and goings, and they put together an expedition to go to this distant galaxy. And so they assemble this team. They've got engineers, they have a linguist, they have a computer expert. And on the way there, their ship is an asteroid that they have hollowed out and installed their facilities inside to protect them from the radiation while they're traveling. And to get there, I guess it takes them a year to get there. And what they're doing is to give them working gravity on their flight there, they accelerate at the speed of gravity, which is 9.8 meters per second squared. They accelerate at that rate and keep accelerating for half the journey, so that you have constant gravity. And then they stop and they turn the ship around and then decelerate at that same negative 9.8 meters per second squared. They slow down at the kind of reverse speed of gravity to give them gravity just in the other direction for the second half, the last 6 months of the journey, or the last bit of the journey. Since they're approaching light speed during that time dilates. It takes them a year, but it's actually a 17-year journey for the command crew on Earth.
Oh, wow.
So it takes 17 years for them to arrive there, for from the perspective of everyone on Earth. And communication takes a long time. You're talking about, it takes a matter of days, hours or days for a signal to get back, and then for a response to get back to you. So they're very much on their own. So when they get there, so the book is very interesting because it tells the story from two perspectives. It tells the story of them going, and after they've gone there, they've gone to this planet, they've met this alien species, and they've had a series of experiences that didn't end well. And only one member of the crew survives. And he gets rescued basically, and gets sent back on a ship. So he does make it back to Earth, but at the time when they're kind of debriefing him and getting his telling of what went on. It's, something like 40 or 50 or 60 years later. So they tell the story from the perspective of it actually happening, and then at the same time, they're doing kind of flash forwards, and they're telling the story of the debriefing as he tells the story simultaneously. So you get two sides of it, and so thus it really does leave you until the last like 5 pages of the book for what actually happened, because it takes both tellings that time to reach that point in the story. So it's very interesting. It holds you off to the very, very end, and it definitely has a surprise ending. That's really the only way to put it. It's not, there's certainly many things you can think about it. It involves a lot of the discussion about how can the Almighty, how can God let bad things happen to people, and if someone who is very much in love with God and working for what they believe is God's will or the good of people, how can bad things happen to them? And if bad things happen to them, is it God being displeased with them? Is it God doing that, or is that not it? And that is certainly open for discussion. And it's just a very, very, very interesting story. It's certainly something that you hear a lot whenever bad things happen. People wonder why bad things can't happen, and I feel like it's one of those things that everyone has to kind of come to their own discussion on. And it's an interesting book. It's called The Sparrow.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so I just finished that. One and then that I'm reading currently is called Mayflower. It's by Nathaniel Philbreck, and it's a historical account of the Pilgrims, the English Pilgrims coming across the Atlantic on the Mayflower. The whole Plymouth Rock kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's a very well researched historical account from journals and historical records. So it gives a very good telling of that story, and I know it's very fashionable to hear the story of how the Pilgrims showed up here and just completely butchered the Indians and made a mess of everything. And while a mess was made, it actually wasn't the initial Pilgrims that showed up. There was one generation of peace, but the children of the original Pilgrims and the children of the class of Indians that interacted with them, this next generation is where the conflict and the violence started, and where things really kicked off. Oh, wow. That led to where things happen now. The initial Pilgrims really did show up here in a state of humility, if not because they were humble people, but because they showed up here with nothing and were completely ignorant of what was required to start a new life. And they showed up off target, off season, in a location that was undergoing what is now known as a miniature ice age. So they were experiencing Cape Cod in November during record-breaking temperature, record-breaking low temperatures, and they were straight up wearing buckles on their shoes. Like,
great timing.
Ice. Half of them died. I mean, almost before they got off the boat, and then once they get off the boat, another half die. I mean, it really wasn't pretty. But in the midst of all of this, they managed to form the Mayflower Compact, which is a document that effectively separates church and state, and holds everyone accountable. In a sense, they were setting up a completely free existence. They could have chosen whatever rules they wanted, or complete, anarchy, for lack of a better term. And they chose to form a document and make everyone who was able to sign, to agree to abide by the laws that we all decide. We're all here together. We're all here, but we're all here together. And if we're going to live together, we have to agree to be nice and work together. And they actually had the presence of mind and insisted on doing this, and I think that speaks a lot to their character and their strength. And certainly it can be romanticized, positively or negatively. I happen to be directly related. My ancestry involves people who were part of this voyage, people that came over on the Mayflower. Really so cool. My mom had a special interest in this story. My parents are very into genealogy. So the research kind of, led to the knowledge that these are kind of our peeps. And so it's good to kind of get a story and see what happened. It certainly isn't all good. It's human. It's a human story. And so you get all kinds of human characters, but it's very, very good. I'm about 120 pages in, so about a quarter of the way through it. It's called Mayflower. It's very, very good. It's a history book, but it's not You know, it's the story of what really happened. And I'm a firm believer that you can't, you know, life imitates art, you know, or rather art imitates life. Sorry, is what I meant to say. You know, you can't make some stuff up.
Yeah.
Certain stories only involve things that can only happen in real life because you just can't conceive of certain things happening. And this is certainly a story that has a lot of those aspects, and it's an interesting book.
Very cool. Yeah.
I would also like to get into reading more, but when I do, it's things like that, like Walking Dead graphic novel.
Well, I mean, that's a good one. If you're gonna read, you know, I don't. Even, that's not a. That's more of a. That's a comic book. That's a book with a capital B. You know, I mean, that's 2 inches tall.
That's actually a compendium. It includes. I don't know how many comics, but you know they release them as individual comics.
Yeah.
They combine them into thicker books that maybe have 10 comics within that, and that involves like 5 of those.
So it's the brick.
It's a brick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's certainly worth it. You know, I have the V for Vendetta graphic novel, and I have The Watchmen, and it was I had never read a comic book before. I saw them online and I bought them, and I had never read a real comic book before, you know, or a graphic novel. I mean, that's really what it is, you know, and it was very interesting. I mean, the movies, of course, you know, don't do it justice. But I mean, the artwork is fantastic, and yeah, I certainly like comic books. The artwork with the Ultimate Avengers series that's been around here the last 5-10 years is just fantastic. And I mean, you can tell what they did. I mean, the character that was drawn in the comic books is Samuel L. Jackson. They were planning, you know, on making this the multimedia deal that it is now. But the artwork is unbelievable. I've got it on my computer, so I can use that for my backgrounds, and I would blow that stuff up and make it poster size all over my house if I could.
Yeah. Some of the artwork in some of the comic books is just amazing.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's one of those things where artistry is something that true artistry. It's easy to say that true artistry is kind of missing nowadays. You know, there aren't that many Sistine Chapels. But, you know, in a way there are. I mean, you look at street art that's going on, you know, and people are certainly still capable of creating these breathtaking pieces of art, whether it's an image or a sculpture. You know, there's photorealistic, super hyper-realistic sculptures that, you know, I mean, it's, I think when you're placing individual, you know, strands of hair on a sculpture, you know, I mean, that's certainly art, you know. it takes the wax museum to another level.
Remind me, sorry, Nate, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Go for it.
Just remind me when we're done to show you some books I've gotten from one of my favorite artists right now. I've found from, he does a lot of things in comic books. His name is he goes by the name Menton 3. Okay. And that piece actually up there.
I saw that. I was gonna ask.
Yeah, it's like, you know, he releases these graphic novels sometimes with other artists, and they start off with Kickstarter, and so when you donate, you get the book and something else, or just the book or whatever. So when I donated the first time, I got the book and also a hand sketch, like a quick drawing from him. Very cool. And that's it right there, and I love it. Him and another guy, Ben Templesmith, and they have really cool stuff. And I have some of their stuff around here. I'll show you afterwards. You might like it.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. It kind of reminds me a guy I worked with. His name is Mike Walton. Yeah, and I think the name he goes by is Quasi Lucid, and you can find him on the internet. And it's really, really, really detailed stuff. Comic type artwork. But I've seen him work, and you know, he's got his tablet that he's drawing on, and you know, zoomed way in and putting, you know, kind of the shine, the glisten on the character's lips or on their eyeball, and you know, it's very, very detailed. And he does some he's got some comic strips that he has out hosted on various websites that I was following, and it's beautiful artwork. It's the kind of thing where it's like it's got kind of a dark quality to it, like a dark grit to it. Yeah. He's very good at the kind of the horror movie type, you know, thing that kind of puts you on edge. Like there's something edgy, you know? Yeah, looking down the dark tunnel. It's very interesting stuff.
That other one up there is actually done by one of our buddies, Ben Osagera. He's really talented at drawing. I don't know if he knows it, but I had asked him. I told him that I would record him beatboxing and like do a mix and everything if he would give me a personal sketch, and that's what he gave me. I think I still owe him on that recording.
It's a good trade.
Yeah. Yeah, man, all that stuff, like especially the darker imagery, like in these comics that I have, just amazing. And then now comics, even when it wasn't even that long ago, when I was young, comics and all things nerdy were bad. Like you didn't want to do that. You didn't want people to know that you watched Star Wars 50 times.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now you've got like Comic-Con, which is the hugest thing.
Nerd festival. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, and then you have all these shows like Walking Dead, and you have Flash, and all these, and not even to mention all the Marvel stuff that's going on, and it's huge. It's ginormous.
Yeah, it's become a movement that it really wasn't before, and that's good. It's found a mainstream legitimacy, and it makes it cool. And that's what, unfortunately, I mean, you have to make something cool for it to be popular with the kids. So it's good that being a nerd is cool. Man,
It takes people a little while to warm up to it.
Yeah, I wish I had known about that when I was young and nerdy. That would have been nice.
Did you have something to say, Nate?
Oh no! Well, I was just gonna just like you were talking about the Sistine Chapel and just how art is different nowadays and stuff. And I think there is still things that are just as impressive. They're just applied in different ways. And yeah, even things like comic books. I mean, there's some amazing imagery and artists out there that a lot of the time, that because there's so many artists out there that do maybe some similar things, a lot of them get overlooked. And yeah, there's all kinds of wonderful stuff out there. Sometimes you just have to dig really deep to find it.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly out there, and you have to kind of broaden your search about kind of what qualifies, and it's kind of thing where
actually that's true. It's not so much digging deep. It's more of kind of widening your spectrum, I guess, of what to look for and what to accept.
Yeah, and if someone, I feel like there's artwork that's created with computer code, and there is a certain, there's a certain kind of mathematical quality to it that's just kind of visualizing chaos or visualizing order, but there's an element to it where, you are creating something, and you're creating something that interplays off of something else that you've created. And if that's not art, it's basically visual music is what it is. I mean, that's what music is, and that's what these visuals are. And it's kind of thing where that's just one application that's may not even be pursued necessarily as an art. It might just be something, someone like me who makes music and just wants to put something cool on the screen behind them while they play.
Exactly. And, have some visuals to go along with it.
It's just background lighting is almost what it is, but it's kind of thing where when I see graffiti, a really eye-catching piece of graffiti, because there's territorial gang tagging, right?
Yeah.
There's no art to it when you just write "Baby Joker" on the side of the wall, But
Snatcher,
but when you see art, it. And what's really cool is that a lot of times the guy that did that, works at a grocery store or somewhere, and this is just, he has this artistic ability. He just, it's just a hobby, and it's something that he's not able to do full time, even though maybe he could, but his life hasn't made that possible. And so it's kind of refreshing to see that, art is out there. And when you give people, a little free time, inevitably, art happens. And certainly, things like the Sistine Chapel do exist. Yeah, you just have to be kind of flexible with your definition. And if you look at the scale of things, art is in no way slowing down. And it's not cheapened at all by the fact that more people are able to see it. It doesn't qualify. It doesn't really matter if no one sees it. It might matter to you, but
because everyone looks at it differently. Art is something different for each person. So
it has to be received.
Yeah.
There you go.
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go back, kind of wind back to, getting back into like psychedelics and everything like that. You were talking about in one of your experiences with DMT, that there was this entity that was there with you,
right?
That was kind of the main subject of the trip.
Mm-hmm.
So for me personally, right now, if I had to categorize it, I guess I would call myself an anti-theist.
Okay.
And then coming to this kind of conclusion, I had kind of your voice in the back of my mind. Because well, real quick, my backstory is I grew up in a Catholic family, went to private school pretty much my whole life until college, and got to college, took ugh, some class.
Must have been great.
One of those,
Oh,
yeah,
man,
it really
why
had an
can't I-
impact. I can tell.
I can't think of the. It's not a psychology class.
At least you got your money's worth.
It's whatever. But the
Philosophy.
teacher, philosophy, boom.
There you go.
There was a
Boom.
there was
Nailed
a P
it.
in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And the teacher was atheist,
Okay.
and she didn't push anything on us, which I appreciated. But this was still me being in a little religious Catholic bubble, and all she did was just point us to different things to kind of just learn about different people's perspectives, different philosophizers, and really kind of look at the universe. And it took me a while, but I finally kind of popped that bubble that I was in, and I realized that I was living my life with incredible amount of fear for anything, just consequences that I was kind of brainwashed. Really, that's the best word for it. Brainwashed into believing that would happen. You know, like you do this is going to happen. You're going to burn in hell. You're going to do this. I was from a young age was told I was going to go to hell because I listened to Black Sabbath, and
Right.
Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah, rhythms of the devil. There.
Yeah, and
Promising.
Yeah.
so that didn't set me up to be a good Catholic.
You and your
then
satanic chords, yeah.
and you just see all these people, and I had a religion teacher in high school who was just completely miserable. Like he hated everything, and I was like, if this guy is a quote unquote good Christian, I don't want to be that. Like
Yeah.
I will put my, I would give the universe whatever to not end up like this guy. Like I don't care.
You know,
if
I know what I don't want.
yeah, exactly. So, kind of going through my own little journey, I think I've come to realize that I am an anti-theist in the sense that I don't agree with any collective power that usually they don't have good intentions. I mean, Catholic Church, you can't tell me that they're trying to do good for other people. Same with Islam. I mean, with everything that's going on right now, Jewish, anything. I don't think that any organization of people is good because there's always corruption and it's way too easy. But for a while, I think I was a little more angry and I just put off that there is no God. I'm not even going to try.
Right.
But hearing you talk about one of your experiences, you had told me, if you want to maybe get into it a little bit, that now you aren't sure what's out there, but you believe that there is a higher power. Maybe there is a God, but maybe separated completely from any like theist group.
Yeah, the traditional description of God, it didn't really have anything to do with what I experienced. And I guess to get into really the meat of the experience I described earlier, this entity that I encountered, when I was able to really put words to what I saw, the only way to describe it was that it was God. What I saw was God. And it wasn't a man in a white robe and a beard. And there was no mention of Jesus. That never crossed my mind. It was God. It was an ultimate form of something, and it was the ultimate form of me. It was something that was within me. It's kind of like the embodiment of the voice in the back of your head. And it's the sort of thing where it was very easy to look at it and know that this thing was very powerful, but that it knew me. It wasn't some outside creature. It was something that had intimate knowledge of me and was aware of me and of everything that I wanted and was doing and wasn't doing. And that's the only way that it knew how to tell me what it did. It told me to get my shit together, and that wasn't a fluke. That's what I needed to hear. There was no other way to put it. And I think I'm someone who, while I can be unnecessarily verbose about just about any topic, when it comes down to it, brevity is what really gets my attention. If you say 6 words, it might take me a minute to realize that you're not going to say anything else. But then when I think about it, it hits me a little more powerfully than if you give me a paragraph to read. Kind of say as few words as possible and let someone else make up their own mind. Let it hit them, because when it hits them from within, that's where it's really powerful. And this certainly was one of those experiences. And this thing was God. That was the only way to put it. And it was me. It was the ultimate me. It was everything that my subconscious kind of wants to be. It was what I what I aspire to be, and that voice in your head, the voice in the back of my head that's telling me what I should do. You know, it was kind of it was the body behind that, and it was so powerful. It was kind of like I had to hear this thing from myself. This information was only going to be it was only going to come across in the right tone if I got it from myself. And so I'm fortunate that this became available to me and that I was able to go through this experience and have this sort of internal reflection, kind of be put into a state of mind where I could interact with this internal reflection and get some feedback from it. And I knew I needed to get my shit together, but I didn't want to admit that. I didn't want to deal with that. And when you're put in a position of listening to yourself talk, and you hear something that you said, it's kind of hard to refute that evidence. And this was a situation where I could definitely tell that, okay, that was me and myself, even myself, when I was intoxicated, told me to get my shit together. So if I can't even escape it when when I'm high on something, then I think that is something that needs to happen. And I would not have definitely taken the steps in my life to kind of get myself back to where I wanted to be, had that not happened, or it certainly would have taken an indefinite period of time for that to happen. So I'm grateful that this happened to me, and certainly I realize that puts an emotional aspect to it that makes me more willing, more apt to promote it. But it is something that I feel like the public record that exists so far on dimethyltryptamine is beneficial and is consistent in the fact that it identifies the substance and the experience itself as positive, and that's worth listening to. I mean, what better source is there than people who have done it telling you that this helped me?
Yeah.
And like we all, of course, you need to be smart about it, but that's not hard to do, so just kind of use your head, do your research, listen to your gut. And I think we touched on earlier, if someone says that, oh, I'm scared to do that, well, maybe it's something you shouldn't do then. This isn't like a roller coaster where you can trust the laws of physics to do this. I mean, yes, I think you can trust the fact that, I think it was Terrence McKenna who said that you can trust in the fact that most people have lived through this. It kind of puts a harsh tone to it, but when it comes down to it, it's like, yeah, what are you gonna, what are you gonna really hold against the experience when you can say that, the only bad experiences that come out of it are kind of accidental or incidental, related to what was going on, but not a direct result. And so I feel like that's the kind of thing where we can use the information that's out there to our benefit and kind of trust in experiences that have already happened, and have our own go with them and learn our own lesson.
In my in research and things that I've heard or read, it seems like there are some common themes, like when you're doing psychedelics in general. But one thing that you were talking about was maybe becoming more spiritual. And I've heard people that say, now that I've done ayahuasca or I've done DMT or mushrooms, they have now become more spiritual. Maybe not religious, still not following, a specific theism, but they believe in a God now, or at the very least, people like myself who were at a hard no at one point are now like, it's very possible I'd like to be proven right or wrong.
I'm open to it.
Yeah.
I certainly know exactly what you feel like there. For my part, I was raised in a Mormon family, and my family's all very, very active and involved in the church, and it just happens to be one of those things that it wasn't the answer that I was looking for. And it's one of I definitely have nothing ill to say about the Mormon Church itself. I do happen to think that organized religion is a tricky idea to really get right, because when you start asking for money, it turns into something that isn't, it's kind of like once the news starts requiring advertising money, it doesn't become about giving you the news, it comes about keeping you interested. So it's kind of the same thing with religion, where once you start asking for money, I become doubtful as to what your real intentions are. And so it's just one of those things where I happen to not be comfortable with having to pay to hear the word of God, because I don't feel like it's really going directly to God's PayPal account, and so in that sense, I kind of want to make sure that I know where it's going, and I don't think God needs a PayPal account, because he's in all of us. You have to find a way to communicate with him, and I don't think it requires DMT, but it opened my mind to the possibility of it, because I was at the point where I didn't know if there was a God. I guess I was fashionably or socially atheistic, but when it came down to it,
which in its own way has become a religion now.
Absolutely, atheism is religion, just as science is. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a pretty solid convert, to the Church of Science, I guess you could say.
Not Scientology.
Not Scientology.
Very separate.
Yes, but I do believe in science, and I appreciate the fact that at a certain point, science takes on a religious quality once you start talking about things that you can't see and can never see, or really, or even necessarily measure. You have to infer from extraneous measurements, So that certainly takes on a religious quality to it. But I feel more spiritual now, and I feel more connected to God now, and I feel more able to deal with the swings of life without worrying about whether God did it or didn't do it, or whether it's going to please God, because ultimately God is going to be happy if I'm making myself happy.
Yeah, living without that God Band-Aid is probably the best thing, the best change I've done. I mean, I think I'm still trying to find out where I kind of belong in this mad world, trying to figure out what I do best. But getting out of that whole religious funk that I was put in since I could remember, not having that God Band-Aid on was probably the most refreshing thing that I've done for myself. And there's so many people that say, well, if God wills it, or well, it must have been God's plan. It's like, no, you kind of make your plan. Yeah, fate, if you believe in fate, or the universe, things are going to happen that are out of your control, of course.
Yeah.
But to blame God or credit another power or wait for this power to do something about a problem that you could fix yourself, like these people who refuse to take their kid to get medical treatment because God and praying is going to take care of them. No, your kid's going to die. Like, you praying for your kid, their cancer to go away isn't going to do anything. Take them to the hospital, maybe get them some medical cannabis, might help them out a little bit, because now, just a quick segue, has been proven to stunt the growth and possibly shrink and kill tumors. Just to let y'all know. Do some research.
Wow.
And then I was just gonna say earlier that if, to me, these huge religions, if they really cared about your spirituality, why are they so against, for the mainstream ones, why are they so against using psychedelics or something like DMT that obviously makes you more spiritual and makes you a more humble human being? That makes no sense to me. That makes me feel like their interest is not you becoming spiritual. It's you becoming this prog in the machine and giving them money and spreading the word and going out and creating more of these sheep that kind of fund their purposes and not for you, which to me is something horrible, because we've got, as far as we know, one life here. And that's another common thing. People kind of lose their fear of death taking some psychedelics and realize that this isn't the end, that we're part of something bigger.
Right.
Which I would love to believe. I think which is one of my main reasons for being interested, because everybody has a fear of death. I think one of my biggest fears are time. Because that's going to, I see my grandparents and they can't do anything for themselves. And at one point, I know my grandfather was saying that he would rather die than live. And then after seeing him one day, I'm like, at one point I was like, that's ridiculous, that's selfish, blah, blah, blah. And then I saw him and I'm like, I don't blame you, because I don't want to be there. And that's probably my biggest fear. And for these huge religious organizations not to share these natural things with people to enable them to lose that fear or to gain a better sense of their own spirituality, is kind of mind-boggling to me, because it's not their interest.
Well, it's an interesting idea to suggest that increasing your spirituality, or accessing the spirituality that's offered by these natural substances, is somehow not the right kind of spirituality. To saying that you can be spiritual, but you need to be our kind of spiritual, and that's not the right way. We can show you the right way to be spiritual, and I feel like it's so personal that I don't know if one organization can really treat every person individually, nor should they. And it doesn't make sense to me either to um, limit, to put a cap or to restrict access to spirituality if you are a spiritual organization. And I think that does speak volumes about kind of how old paradigms and kind of outdated modes of thinking can be perpetuated. It's easy to see how that mode of thought can achieve incredible longevity when you put the power of God and the threat of hell behind it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think just kind of adding to this, I think everyone kind of has people need something to believe in, and for everyone it's something different. And like for all the different religions out there and everything, I think for some people it's very beneficial because a lot of people, just the way they're programmed, the way they work, they need help, they need a guide, they need something to believe in like
Sure.
that. And I think kind of like you were talking about, John, with the kind of religious, the God Band-Aid kind of thing. I think once, whether it's not good or bad, but once you do take a step back from all that and you see from a distance what the religions are and appreciate them for what they are, then you can start focusing on maybe putting that belief in yourself, and you start believing in yourself more, and that's a goal. You start setting more goals for yourself, and you don't need some higher power to guide you because you're guiding yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's that. Yeah. So I think everyone does need something to believe in, but for everyone it's a different thing. And yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. I grew up in a religious family as well, and two sides actually. My father's side of the family was Jewish, and my mom's side of the family was Catholic, and I've experienced both sides, and nowadays I just believe in myself. I figure I'm gonna get myself through this stuff, and yeah, it's something different for everyone.
I feel like ultimately, God doesn't help you unless you help yourself.
Exactly.
Luck
Yeah.
favors the
Yeah.
well prepared, and you create your own luck. And so, you can wait for something miraculous to happen, and it will be a miracle if it does happen. Or you can get off your duff, and try to make it yourself, and you'd be surprised how much you can get done by yourself.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah,
certainly
exactly.
you can praise God while you do it. I'm not saying that he has to be absent, or it has to be absent. She has to be absent. I don't know. But it's the kind of thing where ultimately you're going to have to do it. It's not just faith, but works is one of those things that you hear in religious writing and speech, is that it's not just believing it. Like, you have to do it. At some point, God's going to want you to do the work, and I think that comes through no matter what your views on God or religion are. Ultimately, the effort has to be put in. Someone has to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It kind of links to kind of talking about how religion has kind of taken a wrong turn over time. Kind of getting into the whole DMT and psilocybin thing for research. Came across this book that I really want to read called The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross by John Marco Allegro, where it talks about I believe the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Where I think those are the oldest known written pages of the Bible, right? Or written books.
Something like that, yeah.
And I think what happened was there were only a handful of people that were deemed worthy enough, had the proper credentials to research these, and he spent years deciphering them. And part of what I've heard is that the word I believe red in like ancient Aramaic or whatever the language was could also mean apple, or referring to the mushroom, to one of the mushrooms. I don't know which one it is. It's not psilocybin. Do you know which one it was?
I mean, that picture there looks like an Amanita.
Amanita muscaria, right?
Muscaria, yeah.
Or muscaria. I don't know. If I'm saying that right.
Muscaria, yeah, who knows?
And that there's all this old sacred religious art that depict this mushroom everywhere, and that's how they say like that Santa Claus came around, that
Yeah.
everything is red and white because this mushroom is red and white, and
Yeah.
they had old art with like a cross or with saints or something, and this mushroom would be in there.
Or even Adam and Eve.
Yeah, Adam and Eve,
Yep.
not Adam and Steve.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Everybody should be married.
Go Texas.
But that's for another topic. Governments and religions just stay out of people's business. I lost my train of thought now. So yeah, you would find these in old paintings and pieces of art. And then one fun fact is that the Catholic Church had actually bought up the rights for this book, and for a long time would not publish it. So
Really?
you couldn't find it anywhere. I think now someone had got their hands on it, and you could probably find it on the internet, but got rid of it. And the guy who researched the Dead Sea Scrolls said that well, I think it was like the Council of Trent or something, where the church decided which books were going to be included or excluded from the Bible.
The Council of Nicaea.
Nicaea.
Yeah.
Nicaea?
I think that's where they kind of ironed out some inconsistencies between
Yeah.
all the different sects about kind of what was going to be the real story of Jesus. What's going to be our story.
So if you think about it, they left things out on purpose, and if the message behind spirituality and religion has gotten so muddled over time, of course they're going to keep out something that says, well, this all started with what was like sexual practices, or fertility practices, and tripping your balls off on these mushrooms.
Right.
Yeah.
Constantine made it clear that was not going to be the story.
And Nate, you were just telling me earlier, right, that how you were listening to that podcast, right, and you'd learned how the story got all muddled.
Yeah, from the Joe Rogan podcast. Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting because he was talking about. Now I'm going to do a bad job of trying to retell this, but he was talking about how like Moses stumbled across a burning bush, and what was the name that you were saying, the bush,
the
maybe
acacia plant.
Acacia plant,
bush.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it could well be that could have been an acacia bush, and while it was burning, it was releasing DMT into the air, and so Moses could have been tripping off something good there, and he could have seen what he could have seen God, and maybe God told him, hey, these are, I'm going to give you some guidelines that people need to start living by, and that could have been the 10 Commandments, so. Just really interesting ways of looking at what could have happened, and it's just very fascinating stuff. And that could very well be, I mean, it's all natural things, and yeah.
It's interesting how similar that is to the experiences that people report when doing DMT, through various means. How similar it has to, encountering some entity that is knowledgeable and powerful, and directly communicating with you in some sort of kind of instructional manner that's kind of giving you kind of the keys to life, or kind of telling you kind of how to do this, how to live. And it's funny that, I didn't do DMT. It didn't tell me to go rob a bank, and have a bunch of like unprotected sex. That's not what it said. Like it said to watch yourself, check yourself before you wreck yourself. And so it's powerful to me that, in the midst of what was probably the period of most, heaviest psychedelic use, over excessive, complete overindulgence in my life, kind of ended with this experience that, basically told me like, hey man, you need to rein it in. You need to get yourself together here. And so, I think that speaks volumes itself. It's not like I was sitting here trying to find out how to get my next high. In fact, it kind of told me like, maybe you shouldn't really get so high.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Well, and it's interesting too. I think I remember in that same podcast I was listening to, the guest that Joe Rogan had on was Ashley Lyon.
Amber Lyon.
And I'm sorry about that, Amber Lyon. Ashley, I don't know why I keep thinking Ashley.
It's
Amber
close.
Lyon, and she mentioned something about a group that had done like a study called like Good Friday it was some group that got together, and I can't remember if I think it was DMT or maybe it was ayahuasca. I can't remember what they took, but they all reported having very religious, spiritual encounters, and through their experience, and they said that it was very similar to what people, to like what was going on in religion and what people could have actually seen. But now it's hard to say about that too, because that stuff has been ingrained in our heads since we were born, and people have known about all that stuff. It really could just be a rehashing of what was already in their head and them seeing those images in a different way or something. You know what I mean?
Certainly.
Yeah. So it's hard to say, but it's all very interesting.
It is. It'd be interesting to see, kind of compare reports from these Amazonian tribes and the people who in those communities who do DMT, kind of compare the experiences and kind of see what kind of imagery is similar and what is different. When you come from a completely different background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Segue.
Segway.
So
I don't even know what the segue is, but segue.
There's just so many things that I wanted to talk to you about. Obviously, we're gonna have you come in as often as you'd like.
I'm enjoying it.
You don't even have to come in physically if that's even a problem. We could just do Skypes all around.
Yeah, definitely.
Three-way Skype.
See what we can do.
And I definitely would love to talk more about your experiences or your knowledge with psilocybin, other LSD if you've done that, or more DMT related things. We'll probably save that for another time.
Certainly.
Get deeper into that. But there's one thing I really did want to ask you. And one story you had talked to me about. And I had forgotten about it, and I saw this article randomly from Vice, and their title is "Orgasmic Meditation is a Whole New Way to Stroke."
Yes, good old pussy. Poontang. Yes.
And there's a picture of this girl wearing. Nate, can you see my screen?
Yeah, no, I can't. Yeah.
Okay. And she's wearing a shirt that says "Powered by Orgasm."
Yes, she is.
And when I saw this article, it quickly reminded me of a story that our friend Nick had a run-in with someone from this, in my own words, cult. Someone part of this cult and or scheme.
Organization.
I don't know exactly
scheme.
what Ponzi scheme means, but I'm going to call it a Ponzi scheme. I don't know what the word Ponzi means. It sounds like some kind of dipping sauce.
I mean, it would probably be delicious because money usually tastes good. But
so yeah, tell me about this story. And Nate doesn't know what it's about, so if you want to, don't skip on any of that.
Okay, so yeah, we'll start from square one. It's been a minute since I had to think about this, so hopefully I can keep it nice and tight. So I was working at an outdoor movie that I've worked at for a couple of years. It runs all throughout the summer. And as the event was ending and everyone was leaving, me and the other workers were standing in the back, just kind of waiting for safe space to clear out so we can get to work, taking everything down and loading up. And I'm working with a bunch of guys. We've been there all day setting up this PA system, putting up this projector with this 52-foot tall inflatable, or rather 52-foot wide inflatable, movie screen. Working all day, surrounded by a bunch of guys, and this happened to be taking place on the Santa Monica Pier. So we're working as everyone else is going about the regular beach activities. So there happened to be a good deal of eye candy there, and we've been working with these guys all summer. So a large percentage of our free time is spent commenting on the various female specimens that happen to be in the area. Rarely, if ever, with any sort of interaction or consequence. It's all just we're all grown men, maybe not mature, but we're still trying to goad each other into going and talk to the girl, right? But anyway, these two very attractive women walk by, and they give us a glance and smile, and I smile back, and I'm sure that everyone behind me was also smiling, just because. Anyway, I don't think anything of it, but a minute later, I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it's one of these girls, and she asked me some questions about working here and what other places this event happens and all that kind of stuff. Now that I think about it, she did ask me what seemed like kind of an inordinate number of questions about my job and my employment situation, but it didn't become apparent as to why that might be important until later. After some small talk, she says, well, I don't know how to say this, but can I invite you to something kind of weird? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, it's this thing called orgasmic meditation. And it's not what you think. It's no porn, all right? Nothing like that.
And you're like, damn.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I said was, well, I'll come anyway. And it was like a meeting, a meeting in Hollywood, on Wednesday, at 8:00. So I look it up. It was she directed me to. They had a site on the Meetup, like a Meetup page. So there was a description on there, and this wasn't actually going to be the practice of orgasmic meditation. This was kind of an informational session, a meeting. With people who may be interested, to kind of explain what it is and then kind of introduce you to the community and tell you, kind of who to contact if you want to explore this practice. So that all seemed pretty above board. This meeting was going to involve some games where you go around the room, everyone kind of doing word association stuff, saying the first thing that comes to mind, and they're going to kind of steer things in a sexual direction. And I've heard of these kind of things before, so I was kind of aware with that concept.
Quickly, what do these tits remind you of? Boobs.
Yes,
Good job.
So I was, I'm open to these kinds of things, and I was kind of familiar with the idea, the whole, you're playing the games and you kind of try to say kinky stuff and make people go, ew, Anyway, so I was thinking, yeah, why not? And this girl that was talking to me was very cute. So of course that helped. It really sealed the deal there, and I agreed to go to this thing on Wednesday. And of course, she walks away and everyone's like, dude, what happened there, man? So I tell them what happened. Of course, their jaw hits the floor when, I say orgasmic meditation. I'm like, well, I'm going to go figure it out. I'm going to go see what this is, And so I've called and spoken to her at one point before Wednesday when the actual meeting happens and kind of get the rundown about what this actually is. And anyway, Wednesday comes, I show up. They had just kind of rented out a room at the International Dance Academy near Hollywood and Highland. So I go up there. I walk in. There's the girl who had talked to me and her friend and another guy. The three of them are dressed very nice. One girl just looks like sex. There's really no other way to put it. She's wearing like this gold tinfoil dress with these impossibly high heels. No undergarments that I can see. I checked, and the guy that's with them is also very well dressed. And I look around the room. There's two chairs in front, and then a semicircle of chairs in front of them, and it's a whole bunch of guys sitting there. Which instantly it's like, damn it, this is totally not what I came here for. But whatever. Everyone looks like they're peaceful. It doesn't look like there's anything untoward is going to happen. So I pull up a chair. I see the girl that I had spoken to. She sits down on the end of kind of the row of chairs. So I go and I grab a chair and put it next to her. And they say, oh, no, we have a chair for you over here. And it's not next to her. There's a guy in between she and I, and then the chair where I'm sitting is in between that guy and another guy. And when I say in between, like they wanted to make sure that we were nice and cozy. So, I mean, it's knee-to-knee contact as I'm sitting next to these gentlemen. The guy on the right has an English accent. Looks like he's maybe, mid-40s and kind of a artistic type. And the guy to my left looks like he's about 75 and maybe like was an ex-cop or something. There's kind of just this very tired look to him. He's talkative, but he looks just kind of tired and like he's kind of been through the ringer. I don't know how else to put it. Some guys show up. The rest of the guys that are there, there's a wide range of kind of quiet, timid, dare I say nerdy, to outgoing, kind of attractive, muscle-bound types. It's all a full range of male people. But, so I'm here where they positioned me. The meeting starts, and Ray, the well-dressed gentleman, and the girl in the tinfoil get-up sit, and my chair happens to be directly positioned, like directly in front of her. She's sitting directly in front of me. And she refuses to cross her legs, and she's not wearing any underwear. And it's the kind of thing where I see it, and it's like you look away, but then you can't help but keep checking, to make sure that she's still not wearing any
Are there
underwear.
underwear now? What about now?
Yeah, what
Underwear
about now? Has she thought to cross her legs? No, she has not thought to cross her legs.
Were they eaten?
Yes. And so it was very, it's like immediately I'm kind of like, oh, okay, let me try to concentrate on what we're doing here. And we go about these word games, and they kind of, they go about the circle. It starts and ends with the two people who are sitting in the front. So the girl, it's like the question gets asked, and then everyone goes around saying their response. And the guy is the one that like ends, and he always says something that supposedly, is kind of sexually charged and supposedly sets the girl in the orange dress or the gold dress sets her into kind of a sexual tizzy, Oh, it gets her kind of a hot flash, right? And it's this kind of thing where after a while, it's kind of like, oh, okay, we get it. Like, we get it. You're supposed to be horny. Okay, But so you go about these games, and after that, they explain kind of what the practice for orgasmic meditation is. And supposedly, it is a practice by which a woman and a partner, usually a man, she has the partner gently massage the upper left-hand quadrant of her clitoris for 15 minutes. And that's what it is. And it's supposed to be this thing where you aren't pursuing a goal. She's not writhing around and making all these noises or anything like that. It's strictly just for her to enjoy the experience, and for the person who is giving the experience to enjoy being
Blue
the person
balls.
who gives it. Yes, that's basically the short of it. And so they're telling about this, and they say that if you want to go to this seminar where you can learn from people who are in this community, you can come to the seminar that we have. And they refer to the people who are involved in this practice. They refer to the women as turned on women, and they refer to the men as ignited men.
Ooh.
Right? And so it's all about saying that, of course, it's a room full of men. And now I'm realizing that Ray didn't go around and hit up women and see if they want to go to this thing called orgasmic meditation. These two girls go around and hit up men and see if they want to go to this thing called orgasmic meditation, which they do, of course, because you said orgasm. And anyway, so you can go to this seminar if you want to learn, as a man, you can learn how to be an ignited man and learn how to play with these turned on women, because turned on women want something different than a regular woman. And you just won't know unless you learn these tricks about how to read the signals and how to play the game. And so you can learn how to participate in the practice for orgasmic meditation. And it's the kind of thing where it's like you would go and it's a several day course where it's like you talk about it. The second day they explain it, and then the third day it culminates with you watching a pair of people actually do the practice, right? And if you want to, and so they're talking about this, and really this is all for the men, or this is all for the women, right? This is where the main benefit is. And at some point, of course, someone asks, okay, so this really kind of sounds like it's all for the woman. What does the guy get out of it? He's like, well, once you are in this community and you're in the know, and these turned on women know that you're, familiar with what they're doing with the practice, you get all kinds of action, and you get all kinds of things from these women that you wouldn't be able to get unless you know these tricks. And if you want to know these tricks, you can take our men's course, where you learn how to play the game with these turned on women and how to be an ignited man. And if you want to do that, it's another it's a several day thing. And it ends with this event where we take you out and we show you that these techniques really work. And that's kind of where they end it. We dismiss. They say, well, we only have the room for, a few more minutes, so everyone has to get out here, unfortunately. But, we'll come around, and, if you want any more information, we'll give you a card. We'll let you know where the next meeting is, and you guys can come and get involved. So as everyone's kind of talking and leaving, the elderly gentleman to my left, he kind of taps my shoulder and pulls me aside, and he's like, hey, come talk to me. Come talk to me over here. Away from everything else. So it's kind of like, okay. So I follow him over to the other side of the room, and we chat for a minute. And he says that, I can tell you're a spiritual person. I mean, during the time that we were there, everyone had to get up and kind of say a little thing about themselves and be on the hot seat where they ask you questions and stuff. So, I mean, I guess there was some, he did have some tiny, 8-word insight into my being, but whatnot. he says he can tell I'm a spiritual person, and he doesn't know if these techniques are really working, if what these people are promoting is actually really as spiritually charged they say it is. But he does know that, in his experience, something that he really benefited from was tantra and tantric meditation, and he thinks that I would really appreciate that. And he gave me his card and gave me the name and number of his tantra practitioner who taught him. And says, she's very, very good. And if you let her know that Hal sent you, she'll hook you up, and you can, if you're interested, you can kind of get some free lessons or some cheap lessons in tantric meditation. So I go back to the main group talking. I talked to the British guy who'd been sitting to my right, who he looked and sounded like he was kind of connected with the group that was putting this on. But I wasn't really sure. And he says that he's been a part of the community for a long time. He wasn't a part of organizing the event, but he's been a part of the practice of OMing, OM, orgasmic meditation, for a while. And he says that he's talking about the Ignited Man's Course, and he's saying that the event they do at the end where they take you out, they show you that it really does work. He's like, it really does. But he kind of lets on that they basically take a bunch of women who are part of the community and have them be at the bar. So then when the class, right, of dudes shows up saying the certain things that they've been trained to say over this 3-day course, of course the women know like what you're doing. And so it's kind of like you're led into a situation where you're going to pick up a girl regardless.
Led to the slaughter.
Yeah. And so it's like it's like, I don't know if he was really supposed to like say that, because it kind of sounded like, okay, so you give me a course on how to pick up chicks, and then you take me to a place where you have chicks there specifically for me to pick up. Like that doesn't sound necessarily like it really works. But anyway, it was all kind of so fast that I just kind of like glossed over it. This whole time, in between these little side conversations, I've been trying to get in a few words with this girl who asked me there, because that's the reason I'm there. Yeah, sure. When you say orgasmic meditation, that interests me, but I'm there because this girl chatted me up. And I've been trying to get a talk with her, and it's like I can't sit next to her. I can never get to chat with her. Like, so it's kind of a little weird. As I'm finally leaving, Ray, the guy who was associated with kind of putting on the whole thing, he says he walks up and he says, so how did you feel? Like, were you interested in the Ignited Man's Course? I said, well, yeah, that sounds interesting, but just interested. And he says, well, what we can do through this course, through this meeting here tonight, we're actually offering a discount. So if you want to sign up for it now, we can do it for $400, where it's usually $500. That's when it really hit me that, oh, that's what this is. You're selling this how to pick up chicks course. Mm-hmm. And of course, you draw people in here with saying that you're going to get to rub a girl's clit for 15 minutes. And it turns out
like it's a bigger thing than I thought. I mean, they have one of the people. I don't know if she's the main person, Nicole, whatever. She was on TED Talk. Mm-hmm. Looks like they're being spread to like Britain.
Yeah, I mean it's all over, and it's something where I've actually seen people with the Powered by Orgasm shirt before.
Do you think maybe it's like a completely different movement, and for you, like that specific group, or maybe one of their other
a radical offshoot that's kind of trying to get money out of you?
Yeah.
It's certainly possible, and I thought about that. So I went through this whole experience. Yeah. I had this meeting, and I get kind of like shooed out of the room as after I decline their offer to take the discounted $400 price for the How to Pick Up Chicks course. As I'm leaving, the British guy who supposedly wasn't involved with putting it on, I see him bringing in takeout and sitting down for dinner with the guys, which they were kicking us out because they only had the room for 10 more minutes. But at those 10 more minutes, they were sitting down for dinner in the room. So it's kind of like, okay, I see what's going on here. And when I left, I tried to, say goodbye to the girl that I was speaking to and the woman with no underwear on, and got just a very, very dismissive, they'd been very chatty before, and now they're, okay, thanks. All right, see you later.
I'm on my break.
Yeah. And so I go home, and it's just kind of like it all, this had all just happened like after work, so it's like I continue on my way home. And I'm the whole next day at work, it's kind of keep going over my head. Like, this is kind of weird. Like, what happened there? Yeah. And we had all, someone had mentioned, of course, pretty quickly after this had come up at the outdoor movie thing when this girl approached me, what if this was some weird, eyes wide shut, sex cult kind of thing, It's like, and I was like, well, I'm certainly going to go find out. So that was in my head, but it's kind of like, well, I don't really know. This seemed, like just kind of a poorly executed, sales plan. I don't know. I mean, whatever. They did put me in the right spot to look up a girl's dress, but I don't really know if that was enough. But Anyway, so the next day I get home from work, and I hadn't smoked any weed in several days. And as happens when you do smoke again, I was getting really high, and I was thinking about it, and the story just kept going through my head. And as I was thinking about it, I turned down the whole, sex cult path, and it's like, oh my God, they were trying to recruit me, and they were trying to get my money, and everything kind of all started falling into place. And I thought, wait a minute, I still have the bong in my hand, and I'm thinking, I'm just paranoid as balls because I haven't smoked weed in a few days, and now I'm really, really high. So I put down the bong and I say, you know what? I'm gonna forget about this. I'm gonna come back, revisit this topic once I've sobered up a little bit. And I turn on the computer and I get on Facebook, and the first thing that I see on Facebook is one of the guys from the movie put that article from Vice, on my Facebook. As soon as I saw the picture with the girl in the t-shirt and the title with orgasmic meditation, and I saw that it was from vice.com, instantly I was like, okay, second source. That's not just me that thinks this is a weird thing. This is definitely something fishy here. And that's when I realized that, this was definitely, I had a near brush with a sex cult. I never thought that would have happened.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that the girl did want to have sex with me. She just wanted me to pay to learn how to have sex with her. So it's not like it was prostitution. It's not like it was completely, disingenuine or whatever, not genuine. It was just, a little misdirected. I think because okay, so here's my thinking. When she first approached me and she asked a lot of questions about my job, she's trying to see, do you have money? Yep. Are you going to be willing to pay for this? And
you probably trying to impress her, let on that you might not
it's
just
a girl.
be,
okay, here's the thing. It's
along.
Totally psychology. Like if a woman asks you about your job.
Yeah, I didn't bring my Porsche today. I rode my bike.
You don't say that you're unemployed. You don't say that you live with your mom. You don't say that you ride the bus. You don't say any of those things, And so, I certainly don't live with my mom, but I ride the bus and I ain't got no money. So I think they were barking up the wrong tree, but, whatever. I guess these baby blues convinced her otherwise. But it was pretty interesting. I must say, it's an experience that I haven't really had the rocks to tell my family about yet. But I'm certain that they will have a laugh whenever it finally does come up.
Oh man, it was. I was kind of hoping that Vice would have like a summary on here, like, well, this is a bunch of bullshit. Right. It just seems like it's a
fishy thing, because I mean, hey, I'm sure it is a special experience to rub a girl's clit for 15 minutes, and to I certainly feel some sort of vicarious satisfaction after being involved in that pursuit.
But if I'm going to be paying money,
yeah,
you're going to be doing stuff for me.
But I had to buy it. It does take on a different tone. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not saying it doesn't work.
These women's will be doing stuff for you, but you'll be paying for it.
Yes, exactly. You can. There's a price, Yeah. It was interesting. So, keep your eyes open there. Orgasmic meditation. Who knows? It might be for you or your bank account.
Yeah. At a theater near you.
Yes.
Oh man, people are weird.
Yes, they are.
They're weird. There's something for everybody.
That there certainly is.
Yeah. I bet something we said during this podcast turned somebody on.
Yeah.
Really hard. Like, oh my God, DMT.
Yeah.
Oh, those 3 letters.
Oh, yes. Maybe. I don't know if I want to hear it.
Well, they can keep it to themselves. So there's so much more to talk about with you. We're already at 100 minutes.
A comfortable hour and 40, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe, we can cut it here and we'll save it for another time.
Absolutely. We'll dive into some more stuff later.
Yeah, it was very interesting to hear your knowledge and experience and perspective on everything we talked about, like psychedelics, and hearing your adventurous story with the sex cult that you almost became part of.
Near miss.
Oh man,
yeah,
close one.
Yeah. So I guess that'll do it for us.
Great.
Thanks for tuning in, and thank you, Mr. Hood, for coming and joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, guys. It's been a pleasure, and we'll look forward to next time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, Nate, hold on to your britches. We're gonna play our outro song.
Holding them.
See y'all's later.
So long, y'all.
Later.
So melt your face tonight. It may sting, but it'll be alright.